Vice President Kamala Harris has been under vicious attack from the moment she announced that she was running for president. If you look at social media, it was a ton of folks who were going after her. Well, a particular group said, you know what? Let's look at this. Let's actually examine this. Where is this coming from? And so that's exactly what they did. And their findings are quite interesting. And we decided to talk to the leader of this organization that actually did this. And so again, if you look at on social media, you look at the bots, you look at all of these different folks out here and with the vicious attacks on her. You've seen it on the right wing. You've seen many folks on the right have their various attacks on her. But social media has been a lot different, largely led by Twitter. But you also can expand it to Facebook and Instagram and other platforms as well. There's been no other politician who has been under the kind of attack of Vice President Kamala Harris. Why is that? Are some folks somehow scared she might run for president in 2024? The folks at Bot Sentinel, released this report that lays out the lack of action taken against these racists. The company reported 40 tweets, but only 2 of the tweets were taken down for violating Twitter's policies. For the first 122 days of the year, there were more than 4,000 tweets harassing Vice President Harris. Christopher Boozy is the founder and CEO of Bot Sentinel, joins us from New Jersey. Christopher, walk folks through what this actually means when you have clearly identifiable tweets that violate a company's policy, but Twitter does not take any action.
Hi, Roland. Thank you for having me. What does it mean? It appears that Twitter just doesn't care about, targeted harassment, abuse, bigotry towards women of color, Black women. We did this study because last year we published a report on Meghan Markle, and it got a lot of attention. And a group of Black women came to us and said, "Hey, look, we see these attacks that's happening every day. It's getting worse in terms of Vice President Harris. And please do something. Look at it. Are we losing our minds? We are reporting these tweets. Nothing is getting removed. Twitter is not taking any action. And, what's happening?" So what we did, we decided, hey, look, we're going to look at this. We're going to try to determine if Twitter's actually ignoring these reports. Is this really happening? Is it getting worse? So for your viewers, for the short of it, yes, all of the above. We started looking at this stuff. We reported it as if we were just average users, someone just using the platform, not having any type of relationship with Twitter. And we found the worst tweets, and we're talking about the most vile stuff that you can say about women or women of color, Black women. And we reported these tweets that are clearly violating their policies. And for the most part, more than half came back as, not violating their policies, meaning Twitter responded and said, no, these tweets are not violating our safety policies, just block the person. And the rest of the tweets were just ignored. Now, what's interesting about all of this is when we did publish the report, Twitter initially stood by, what they initially said to us in terms of, once again, as if we were average users, that these tweets were not violating their policies. It's not until
Christopher, we're showing actually some of the tweets right now, and some of the sickening images. I mean, this is what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until we started receiving press and reporters started reaching out to Twitter to ask them, what the heck is happening. Then they suspended 10 accounts and pretty much removed all of the tweets except, I think, now 1. So it took the report and also press before Twitter finally took action.
So what then is their logic? I mean, did y'all talk to high up officials or did they leave it to lower level executives?
That's right. So Initially, what we did, we didn't want to approach Twitter as if we had a relationship with Twitter or bot signal communicating with Twitter. We wanted to have the experience as if we were just average users. And the point of that is because average users were telling us we're reporting these tweets and they're not getting taken down. We are reporting tweets that have the N word and they're not getting taken down. What's happening? So, if we approach the company as if we're bot signal, of course they're going to take action because they're going to know, hey, this is going to get press. Which is kind of also weird because when we did publish the report, as I stated earlier, they did take their time in removing these tweets. It's when there was an uproar in terms of press and users like, what the heck is going on? Then they finally took action. So the logic behind it is you would have to talk to someone at Twitter to find out the logic behind it.
Wow. Teresa, your question?
Yeah, well, thank you, Chris, for identifying these issues. I have a PR firm myself, and so I am dealing with the same thing with my Black and brown clients. I've done the same thing as an average citizen and reported these things, and again, I'm dealing with the same results. So so it's unfortunate, but what is a question for you? What are some tips that we can do in order to make sure that we are not only protecting our clients, but as a Black woman, protecting ourselves from negative feedback that may or may not come, down the line?
Wow. And I hate saying this. There's pretty much nothing you can do, unfortunately. And that's the problem with this. Because anyone can tweet anything about you. Any group can decide, you know what, we're going to make you a target and just start putting whatever they want to put out about you. And unfortunately, most people don't have the resources to combat that or have, a fan base that can say, hey, this is not true and push back against the mis and disinformation. So this is why we try to put pressure on the platforms to take this stuff seriously. No one, we call them single purpose hate accounts, for example, accounts that are created specifically to target someone. And this is common, whether it's Kamala Harris, VP Harris, whether it's Meghan Markle, Lisa Page. I mean, it's a bunch of accounts that are just created solely to target an individual. And most of this is being, directed at women of color. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put pressure on the platforms to do more. But as an individual, whether it's your clients, whether it's just me, you, it's an uphill battle to fight this stuff.
DeMario?
I'm sorry, can I do a follow-up question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you guys also did a survey of how many, what's the diversity inside of Twitter in terms of those accountants and executives that are sitting in those positions, giving decisions about the reports that are submitted? I'm just curious to know, what is the makeup of the company as it relates to that department?
Right. We don't know, the demographic of the company in terms of are there people of color there that are, saying, hey, look, this is not right. But if you look at those tweets again, I mean, you don't have to be someone from the Black, brown community to see, hey, someone is using the N-word. We need to remove these tweets. Hey, someone has graphic photos that have been altered, which is clearly against their policy. You cannot have manipulated photos of an individual, and they came back and said, using their reporting system, it didn't violate their policies. So I don't know, structurally what's happening at Twitter, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to point out the things that are happening that should not be happening, and putting pressure on the company to take action.
Mustafa?
Yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing. My question is, through the pressure and attention you have been able to bring on Twitter, has there been any changes to the accountability mechanisms inside of it? The structural stuff that folks can point to.
Now, here's the thing. Yes and no. before, when you used to bring this up to Twitter's attention, once again, they would drag their feet and things of that nature. And they're still doing that, but they're taking action a lot quicker than they used to. Sometimes they would just completely deny something was happening. So if we would publish a report and said, hey, there is a group of bots that are doing X, Y, and Z, they would say, they're not bots. And then, journalists will come forward and say, hey, look, we had our own independent researchers look at this and they agree with Bot Sentinel. Then that's when Twitter would take action. This time around, they did do it a lot quicker than they did in the past. But once again, it's still us having to put pressure on them, us having to bring it to their attention. Them not doing it on, their internally by themselves. Them not taking action. Like, we shouldn't find over 4,000 tweets calling Kamala Harris the N-word, the C-word, the W-word, and so forth. They should have things in place to catch that. And so I guess the short answer is, unfortunately, no. Internally, they're still not doing what they're supposed to do.
DeMario.
Man, very interesting discussion. Very excited to learn about your company. I have two questions. First question, does this happen to other oppressed groups? For example, can people say those type of things about our Jewish brothers and sisters, and Twitter just allow it to stay up as they were saying these things about VP Harris? Can they call people, the slur words that they call Jewish folks? Have you guys seen some comparison between how they allow that to be Black people to be attacked versus others?
Right. So first thing, Black women on social media by far the most targeted. There's been numerous studies now on this, so that's one. But yes, Twitter does have a problem with, whether you're Jewish, whether you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, a woman, it doesn't matter. If you're not a white male, basically, you're being attacked on Twitter. And so, yeah, whether it's, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Well, what I mean is, I understand everyone being attacked, but once it comes to their attention, do they have the same level of apathy or, hey, there's nothing we can do about it, as it for Black women or Black people, if they have, like, if this was talking about Jews or, LGBTQ community?
Got it. We don't have, any data, to be honest with you, to say, well, they act a bit quicker if it was maybe a Jewish person that's being attacked, or maybe it's, the LGBTQ plus community that's being attacked. But I can tell you, we have seen those attacks in the past. We have reported those attacks in the past, especially with the LGBTQ plus, and we've had the same type of outcome. But I couldn't say, definitively that it happens more with the Black community or the brown community versus the Jewish community or, whoever.
Well, I'll tell you, as a civil rights attorney, I would be very interested, and maybe this is something your company could do, is actually do the research on once things are actually reported to Twitter. Because I can understand them saying, hey, well, it's equal opportunity. Everybody's being treated trashy on our platform. Okay, that's bad, but it's across the board. But what about once you become aware of the type of language and the type of hate that's being spewed to Black people, Black women in particular, versus other groups? It'd be very interesting to know what is the impact of that from Twitter from that point. That was my first point. So my second point is, I truly don't know what a bot is. Like, I've heard that forever. Can you explain that for people who are ignorant to what is a bot? Is this a person or is this actually a robot that's set up by a computer system? I truly don't know the difference.
And that's another good question, because over time, it's actually gotten a bit confusing for people. So the technical term for a technical definition for a bot is a automated account that is being controlled by a piece of software. There are good bots and bad bots. There could be a bot on Twitter where you are, trying to get, news, and you may tweet at it to get the current news or a stock quote or, some movie advice, whatever. So those are the good bots. And then there are bad bots that are created to sow discord, to pump out, the same message. Those are like the most rudimentary type of bots. They'll just post the same message over and over again. You may tweet a keyword and it'll just jump into your mentions and say, that's not true or something. Sometimes it's not even, the same type of, topic or context in terms of what you're tweeting about. It will just respond to you. And then there are more sophisticated type of bots that are controlled by artificial intelligence that can actually have a conversation with you. And this is all done behind the scenes with software. But we like to explain to people that, we like to call them inauthentic accounts, because bots are just a small percentage of what you're seeing on Twitter and other platforms. Now you're seeing the human-controlled accounts that are fake, that are created to once again sow discord. You have blackfishing accounts that are made to look like they're African American or whatever, and they're not. They're white guys someplace in Idaho or in Europe, tweeting out stuff to try to pretend as if they are black to sow discord. So, if there's a shooting, for example, and a black man was unfortunately killed, you have these fake accounts come in. Well, he should have complied, and they're doing this as if they are African American.
All right, Christopher, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for having me.
We welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022.
We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful. New, unsettling force, and we are here.
We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, poor and low-income people, have to reconstruct society from the bottom up.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
Because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right.
Hold on, just a little while longer.
We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rent.
People with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group.
It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities.
There are still so much trial and tribulations that we go through as Indigenous people. We can't get a decent wage to sustain ourselves, nor can we get adequate housing.
Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day.
Health is a political choice.
What more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's?
There are still forces in denial that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all.
We have an immoral system run by immoral people.
But together we walk, and we walk and we fight.
It's time for a change. Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
See, we are people of resilience. As we fight these interlocking injustices together.
When we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed.
We need the third reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive.
We know what they are doing, but the question is, what are we going to do? Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck.